The night she arrived, I was standing at the highest window of Kethavar Hold watching the snow come in from the east, thinking about nothing in particular except that the solstice feast was in 4 hours, and I had not yet decided whether to attend my own table. My steward Oswin appeared at my shoulder the way he always did, without sound, without warning, like a draft through old stone. "My lord," he said, "there is a woman in your carriage." I looked at him. "She rode in from the Valley Road," he continued, with the particular care he used when he was choosing every word. "In your second carriage, the one we sent to the relay post for the candle-maker's order. She believed it was the hiring coach from Thresh." "Thresh," I said. "The village, yes, my lord, some 7 leagues south. She said she was hired for the solstice kitchen." "We hired no one from Thresh." "No, my lord, we did not." I turned back to the window. The snow was coming harder now, thick white curtains of it, the kind that buried the pass road in an hour. Whatever carriage she had been waiting for in Thresh was not coming tonight. Whatever life she had been running toward or away from, I would learn soon enough, had been interrupted by my horses and my snow and my carriage driver, who had apparently not checked who he was carrying until the gates of Kethavar Hold closed behind him. "Is she distressed?" I asked. Oswin considered this. "She is asking whether the kitchen uses river clay or mountain clay for the bread ovens," he said. "She says it matters for the crust." Something shifted in my chest. I could not name it. I had governed this hold for 11 years, taken it from my father's cold hands at 19, and I had learned to name every sensation in myself with the precision a king requires: hunger, fatigue, grief, readiness, the particular weight of a decision that will cost lives. This sensation I could not name. My wolf stirred. He had not done that in years. Not since I would not go back to that. I kept my eyes on the snow. "Put her in the east wing," I said. "Give her a room, a fire, dry clothes. She can leave in the morning when the road clears. And tonight, my lord, the feast." "She came expecting to work a kitchen," I said. "Let her work a kitchen if she likes, or let her rest. Her choice." Oswin bowed and left. I stayed at the window another few minutes, watching the snow take the courtyards below, and I told my wolf to be quiet. He was not quiet. He had not been quiet in 11 years, but this was different. This was not the old restless pacing I had learned to live with, the prowling dissatisfaction of a bond that never came. This was attention. This was the way a wolf goes still at the edge of a tree line when it has scented something it has been searching for without knowing it was searching. I told myself it was the weather, the pressure of the storm front, some atmospheric thing that had made the wolf twitch. I went down to the feast. Kethavar Hold's great hall was dressed for the solstice in the old way, pine boughs stacked in the window embrasures, tallow candles in the iron chandeliers, long tables laid with the Hold's best cloth, which was still considerably plainer than what they used in the southern courts. We were a northern holding. We did not go in for gilded centerpieces. My seat was at the head of the high table. I took it. My counselors filled in around me: Varret, who commanded the eastern garrison, the elder Thane Holt, who had served my father and survived to serve me, Counselor Marin, who managed the Hold's accounts with a precision that sometimes frightened me, and 4 others whose names I will not trouble you with now. They were capable people. They were, all of them, aware that I was a difficult man to work for, and they had made their peace with it. The feast began. I ate, I drank sparingly. I answered the questions put to me in the short, complete sentences my court had come to expect. I watched the hall. Halfway through the first course, she walked through the kitchen door. She was not serving. She was carrying a small clay cup of something, tea, I would learn, because she had found the Hold's dried linden in the spice cabinet and asked permission to brew it. And she was walking along the far wall toward the window, looking up at the pine boughs with the frank, assessing look of someone who has just decided that whoever hung them had done it wrong. She was not beautiful the way women are described as beautiful in the songs my bard felt compelled to perform at every feast. She was not high-cheekboned and mysterious. She was compact and warm-faced, with the kind of complexion that came from years of outdoor work, and her dark hair was half-escaped from whatever she had tried to do with it, and she was wearing one of Kethavar's spare wool dresses, which was approximately a size too large for her, and appeared not to trouble her in the slightest. She stopped under one of the chandeliers and looked up at the pine bough nearest the window. Then she reached up, without any particular hesitation, and straightened it. 3 of my wolves who slept near the hearth opened their eyes. They did not do this for guests. They did not do this for me, most of the time. They were old wolves, 7 of them, the oldest and most settled of the Hold's pack, and they moved through the feast on the understanding that the feast was a human concern, and they were merely tolerating it. They watched her cross the room. Oswin appeared at my shoulder again. "She reorganized the spice cabinet," he said, very quietly, "and she found a cracked pot on the second shelf of the larder and replaced it with one from the storage room, which she located by asking one of the kitchen boys. She has, my lord, a certain quality." "What quality?" I said. "The quality," said Oswin, "of a woman who is entirely at home wherever she finds herself." I watched her find a seat at the far end of one of the low tables, the table where the younger garrison soldiers sat, not the high table, not anywhere that would indicate she had any idea what rank was, and she settled into it with the ease of someone who has sat down at rough tables her whole life and expected nothing from them except that they hold her cup upright. One of the young soldiers said something to her. She said something back. He laughed, a real laugh surprised out of him. My wolf pressed forward in my chest again. Not a surge, not urgency, something slower and more certain. I looked away. After the feast I walked the Hold's perimeter, as I did most nights, my habit, my thinking time, the hour when the Hold was quiet enough that I could hear what needed hearing. The snow had settled. The storm had moved on east. The courtyards were white and still, the torches burning low in their brackets, and the air had that particular cold clarity that came in the deep of a solstice night, sharp and mineral, like iron held to the tongue. I was passing the east corridor when I heard her voice. She was not speaking to anyone. She was standing in the corridor outside the room Oswin had given her, with the door open behind her, looking out at the courtyard through the corridor's high window, and she was talking to herself. Not anxiously, not the muttering of a frightened woman in a strange place. She was making a list. "The boughs want moving," she said to no one. "The pine takes the light better on the west side, and whoever chose the candle height in the main hall has never sat at a feast table, because if you sit below the line of those chandeliers you spend the whole evening half blind. Should mention it. Or not, it's not my hall." She stopped, seemed to register that she had heard a step. Turned. She looked at me the way very few people in Kethavar Hold looked at me, not with alarm, not with the quick, practiced deference my rank produced automatically in everyone around me. She looked at me the way you look at a person when you are simply determining who they are. "Are you the steward?" she said. "The older one, not the young one with the list." "No," I said. "Oh," she seemed to think about this for a moment. "Are you the lord of the Hold?" "I am." She nodded, as though this were an interesting piece of information that she was slotting into place, but not a piece of information that required her to do anything in particular about it. "Ren," she said, and lifted her clay cup slightly, which I understood was how she introduced herself in situations where a handshake seemed too formal, and a bow seemed too formal in the other direction. "From Thresh. I came in the wrong carriage, apparently." "Apparently," I said. "I'd say I'm sorry about it, but the storm came in, and I don't think you'd have preferred I stand in it." "No," I said. "I would not have preferred that." "The boughs in the east corridor want moving," she said, with no particular transition. "Whoever hung them put them on the north side, and the north gets the cold draft off the pass all winter, so they'll be brown in a week. The west side stays warmer. The candlelight reads better off them from the hall, too. I looked at the bough in question. I had not looked at it once in the 3 days it had been hanging there. "I'll have Oswin see to it," I said. "No need. I can do it in the morning." She looked at the cup in her hand. "The linden tea is from your spice cabinet. I'll replace it when I get home. I have some dried in my pack." "You don't need to replace it." I took it without asking. "Replacing it is correct." She said this with a slight emphasis on the word, not pedantically, not lecturing, simply as though correctness in small things were a matter of course to her, something she had long ago decided and stopped renegotiating. My wolf inside me went so still it was like the moment before a storm breaks, not quiet, but gathered. "The road will be clear by mid-morning," I said. "Oswin will arrange transport back to Thresh." "Thank you," she said, "and thank you for the room, and the dress." She glanced down at the wool dress with an expression that acknowledged that it was, indeed, somewhat large for her. "It's warm." "Good night," I said. "Good night," she said, "my lord." I walked back to my chambers. I did not sleep. In the morning she moved the bough. I know this because I looked on my way down to the morning council, and it was on the west side, and the light coming through the corridor window caught it differently, warmer, the green more alive. It was a minor thing. It was nothing. It had taken someone who had been in my hold for less than 12 hours to notice it, and I had missed it in 3 days, which was not an indictment of me specifically. I had, as I said, a hold to run, but it stayed with me through the council session in a way that minor things generally did not. After council, I found her in the kitchen courtyard. She was sitting on the stone lip of the well, talking to the oldest of my wolves. He was called Grieve. He was 12 years old and moved like a slow river, deliberate and unstoppable, and he had not, in the 11 years since I had taken him from my father's pack, shown particular interest in anyone who was not me or Oswin. He was sitting beside her with his great gray shoulder pressed against her knee and his eyes half closed, and she had one hand resting along his neck in the absent way of a person who is accustomed to animals and knows that the point is not what you do with your hands, but that you keep them steady. "He found me," she said, without looking up. She had seen me before I said anything, which was a quality I was beginning to notice about her. "I didn't call him." "He doesn't usually come to guests," I said. "I know, I could tell from how he looked at me." Like he was deciding, she glanced up then. "Have you eaten this morning?" The question was so entirely unceremonious that for a moment I did not know what to do with it. "Not yet," I said. "There's bread. I helped with the second bake because the kitchen was short this morning. One of the boys has a hand that wants looking at. It may be the beginning of a joint complaint. You should have the healer examine it, and there's a good loaf, brown with the mountain flour. It's better warm." This was, I want you to understand, not the way people spoke to me. This was not the register of anyone in my hold. My counselors brought me concerns framed as considerations. My staff brought me information framed as reports. What Wren of Thresh brought me, apparently, was bread and a note about the kitchen boy's hand, delivered with the same brisk care she applied to boughs and clay cups. "Thank you," I said. "The road's clearing," she said. She was looking at Grieve again, her hand still on his neck. "I can probably leave after midday." "Yes," I said. She nodded. There was a silence that was not uncomfortable, which was unusual in itself, because I was not a man who made silences comfortable for other people. I had been told this, more than once, in various diplomatic ways. "What's in Thresh?" I asked. I was not sure why I asked it. She was quiet for a moment. "A family that wants me married to my cousin Aldrin," she said, "who is a decent enough man but smells of livestock in a way I find difficult to be fond of, and a mother who agrees with the family but is sorry about it, and a plot of ground I've been growing herbs on since I was 10 years old." She paused. "The herbs I'll miss. And the rest? The rest I won't." Grieve pressed his nose against her palm. She scratched him behind the ears without looking, a gesture so practiced it was clearly not the first time she had done it. "The hiring coach from Thresh," I said. "Where was it going?" "Caro, there's a healer's house there that takes apprentices. I sent a letter 2 months ago." "You're a healer." "A student of it. I know plants well enough. I know some technique." "Not enough to be useful without guidance." She shrugged, slight and practical. "Which is why Caro." I stood in the kitchen courtyard with my oldest wolf and the woman who had arrived in my carriage on accident, and I thought about Caro, which was 40 leagues east, and a place I knew nothing particularly good about. And I thought about Thresh and the cousin who smelled of livestock. And I thought about the bough on the west side of the corridor, catching the morning light in a way it had not caught light before. I did not think about the bone-deep stillness in my wolf when she was nearby. I refused to think about that. I had refused to think about it for 11 years, and I was very good at it. "The coach for Caro passes through Henmere on Thursdays," I said. "Which is today." "I know," she said. "I'll make the junction if I leave by midday." "Yes," I said, "you will." I went inside and found Oswin and asked him to have the good carriage ready at midday. Then I went and found the bread, because she had said it was better warm, and I ate it standing at the kitchen window looking out at the courtyard where she was still sitting with Grieve's head in her lap, and it was the best bread I had eaten in 11 years, and I was almost certain that had nothing to do with her. But she was not at midday. Not because she was hiding, or because she had changed her mind. She was in the East Wing corridor, and she had found. I still do not know how she found it, because I had never found it. And it was in my own hold, a patch of damp in the plaster above the third window, where the storm melt had gotten into the old stone, and she was pressing her fingers along the wall with the focused attention of a woman diagnosing something, and she had apparently stopped to do this on her way to the carriage, and simply not quite made it. "You're going to lose that section of plaster by spring," she said to me or to the wall. "The moisture's been there a while. You can smell the particular cold of it." "I'll have it seen to," I said. "You'll want to repoint the exterior stone first, or you'll just lose the next section too." She stepped back, looked at the wall, and looked at me. "Sorry, I'm leaving. I just noticed it." "Don't apologize," I said. She looked at me for a moment. Then she picked up her pack, which was sitting against the wall where she had apparently set it when she stopped, and she swung it onto her shoulder with the ease of someone who carried things regularly, and she walked with me down to the front courtyard where the carriage was waiting. 5 of my wolves were sitting in the courtyard. They were not there when I came through 20 minutes before. They did not often come to the front courtyard in the daylight, which was for guests and council members and the ordinary business of the hold, not for the pack. They were sitting in a loose crescent, 3 on one side and 2 on the other, and they were watching her with the patient, unbroken attention of wolves who have decided something. She stopped. She looked at them, she looked at me. "Do they usually do this?" she asked. "No," I said. She nodded slowly. Then she crouched down, just folded right down, without ceremony, which was the right way to go low with a wolf, and she looked at them, and the nearest one, a young female I called Rask, walked forward and pressed her forehead against Wren's. My chest did something I could not name, and this time I did not try. "I have to go," she told Rask very gently. "I've got a coach to make." Rask stepped back. Wren stood up, shouldered her pack, and looked at me again. There was something in her face, not uncertainty exactly, but the careful look of a woman who is being precise about her choices. "Thank you," she said, "for the carriage and the room and the bread." "You helped with the baking," I said. "The debt is approximately even." Something moved at the corner of her mouth, not quite a smile, the precursor to one. Good journey, she said. Safe road, I said. She got into the carriage, the driver clicked to the horses, they moved. I watched the carriage go out the gate. Grieve appeared at my side. I had not heard him come, and he stood with his shoulder against my leg, and he watched the gate too, and neither of us said anything, because he was a wolf and I was trying very hard to be a sensible man. And then the carriage was gone past the first bend of the pass road, and the courtyard was empty, and Rask sat down in the snow and looked at me. I went inside. I made it to my study. I sat at my desk. I looked at the maps on the wall, garrison positions, the pass road, the eastern boundary of Kethavar's land. I looked at the paper waiting for my signature, which was a routine allocation of winter feed for the garrison horses, and I looked at my hands, and I thought about Caro, which was 40 leagues east, and about a healer's house that took apprentices, and about a woman who noticed damp plaster and corrected bows and replaced linden tea she had taken without asking. My wolf was not pacing. My wolf was not restless. My wolf was sitting in my chest like a stone in still water, absolutely certain, in the way that only wolves are certain about anything, without argument, without doubt, without the complicated human infrastructure of reason and self-protection I had been building for 11 years. I had felt the bond once before, a long time ago, with a woman who was lovely and clever and entirely wrong, and I had followed it, and it had cost me things I was still paying for in smaller and smaller installments every winter. And so I had decided, with the precision of a man who governs a northern hold and cannot afford to be undone by things he cannot control, that I would not feel the bond again. That I would administer my holding and be a fair and capable king, and not need the thing that apparently other men were allowed to need without it destroying something. I had been very good at this. I sat at my desk for 11 minutes. I have always had a precise sense of time. Then I went to find Oswin. The second carriage, I said. Is it available? Oswin looked at me with the expression of a man who has served 2 kings and has watched something that was going to happen for 11 years finally begin to happen. Yes, my lord, he said. The Henmere Junction, I said. How far? For the second carriage at speed in these road conditions, perhaps 2 hours. The Carrow coach leaves Henmere at the 3rd bell of the afternoon. Yes, my lord. What time is it now? Just past the 1st bell, my lord. I stood in the corridor. I thought about the garrison allocation that needed signing. I thought about the damp in the east wing plaster. I thought about Rask sitting in the snow, watching the gate with the patience of a creature who understood something I was only now beginning to admit. Have it ready in 10 minutes, I said. Oswin bowed, and I could have sworn in the single second before his face returned to its composed courtesy that he was almost smiling. The Henmere Junction was a wide crossroads with a post house and a stable and a covered waiting area where the coaches stopped. In summer it was busy. In deep winter it was quiet, a handful of travelers, the coach master stamping his feet against the cold, 3 or 4 horses being watered at the trough. She was sitting on the bench in the covered area with her pack at her feet and a clay cup. She had, apparently, brought her own, and she was watching the road east with the alert, patient look of a woman who is accustomed to waiting without being resigned to it. She looked up when she heard my carriage. Her face, when she recognized it, when she recognized me, stepping down from the second carriage of Kethavar hold at the Henmere Junction in the middle of the afternoon on the day after the solstice, was not an expression I had seen on anyone before. It was not surprise, exactly. It was the face of someone who has been half expecting something and is not yet sure whether to be glad about it. I stood at the edge of the covered area. The Carrow coach hasn't come, I said. It was not a question. I could see it had not come. It's late, she said. Road conditions, probably. Yes. A pause. My lord, she said, careful and direct, why are you here? I had had 2 hours in a carriage to think about what I would say to this question. I had prepared nothing. What I said was, "Because I would like you to come back." She looked at me for a long moment. The post-house fire crackled inside. The horses shifted at the trough. "Back to Kethavar," she said. "Yes." "For what purpose?" "There is," I said, "a position. For someone who knows plants and has some knowledge of healing and notices when kitchen boys have joint complaints and when plaster is failing." I stopped. I had not intended to say the next thing. I said it anyway. "And I find I am not indifferent to whether you go to Caro." She looked down at the cup in her hands. Then she looked up at me. "That is a remarkable amount of words," she said, "for a man who uses approximately half as many as anyone else." "Yes," I said. "Are you telling me you feel the bond?" I had not used those words. I had circled them and approached them and departed from them in 2 hours of carriage travel, and she had simply looked at me for 3 minutes at a crossroads post-house and named the thing I had not named. "Yes," I said. She was quiet. Then I felt something too. I didn't know what it was. I thought it was the strangeness of the place. A pause. "I'm a village herb grower who got into the wrong carriage, my lord. I don't know what to do with that information." "Neither do I," I said. "I have been trying to decide what to do with it since last night, and I have made no progress, which is not my usual experience with decisions." Something shifted in her face, not the precursor this time. The smile itself, brief and real, and it did something to the air around us that I could not have described to anyone. "The herbs," she said, "at the healer's house in Caro, I wanted to learn properly." "Kethavar has a healer," I said. "He is very old and very interested in teaching, and has complained to me 3 times this year that he has no apprentice." She considered this. "That's convenient," she said. It did not sound like an accusation. It sounded like a woman noting that the facts were arranging themselves in a particular way. "Yes," I said. Another pause. The Caro coach was not coming. I was standing at the Henmere Junction in the cold, which was not what kings generally did, and I had no particular intention of moving until she decided something. "The plaster in the east wing," she said. "You'll repoint the exterior stone first." "I'll have it done." "And the candle height in the main hall needs adjusting. Anyone sitting below the second-level chandeliers spends the feast half-blind." "I'll speak with Oswin." "And Grieve," she said. "He has a slow stiffness in his right foreleg. I noticed it when he walked away this morning. Not urgent, but the cold makes it worse. He wants warmth near the hearth in the evenings, not the stone floor." "I'll see to it." She looked at me for a long moment. I met her eyes, which were the ordinary brown of a woman from a village in the south, and entirely extraordinary. And I was very sure of nothing except that the wolf in my chest was the stillest he had been in 11 years, and it was the stillness of a creature that has found the thing it was looking for. "All right," she said. She picked up her pack. She rose from the bench. She walked toward my carriage with the same unceremonious ease with which she did everything, and she paused at the step and looked back at me. "You're going to have to tell me what it means," she said. "The bond, all of it. I know the rough shape from village stories, but not the specifics." "I'll explain it on the way back," I said. "Good," she said, and climbed in. I stood in the snow for a moment. The coach master at the post house was looking at me with the frank curiosity of a man who has seen a great many things at crossroads, and has never seen an alpha king standing in a snow flurry waiting for a woman from Thresh to decide about a carriage. I got in. Here is what I told her on the road back to Kethavar. "The bond is old. It is older than the holds, older than the kingdoms, older than the blood covenants that the founding kings made with the first wolves. It is not a human thing that has been given a wolf name. It is the wolf's knowing, the recognition at the bone level, below language, below argument, that this is the one. It cannot be faked, and it cannot be forced, and it cannot be made to happen to order, which is why the holds have had kings without mates and kings who waited a lifetime and kings who felt it once and lost it, and felt it never again. It means in the old tongue something that does not translate cleanly. The closest is the place where the wolf comes to rest. She listened to all of this without interrupting, which was unusual in my experience. People interrupted explanations about the bond because they were either frightened or eager or both. And when I was finished, she looked out the carriage window at the snow-covered pass road for a while. "The iron seal," she said. "In the Great Hall, what does it do?" "It is the old blood covenant," I said. "The marking of the bond, made before the hold. It hasn't been performed in 200 years. Does it have to be performed? No, it can be what it is without ceremony, without the seal. The bond is the bond regardless." She nodded, then she looked at me. "I'm not going to be afraid of you," she said. "I want you to know that. I am aware that is unusual and that most people are, and I understand why, but I find I am not." "I know," I said. "Is that useful?" "Very," I said. She turned back to the window. After a few minutes she said, without looking at me, "The cousin in Thresh, Aldrin, he really does smell of livestock." "So you mentioned." "I want you to understand I was leaving anyway. I'm not here because I had nowhere else to go." "I know," I said. "The herbs are real. I do want to learn properly." "The healer's name is Mavin," I said. "He is 73 and has the energy of a man of 40 and will probably teach you more in a year than Caro would in 3. Something at the corner of her mouth again. "You have a high opinion of your own healer. He has told me so himself many times." She did laugh then, a real laugh, and it filled the carriage, and my wolf, my cold, governing, ancient wolf, wagged his tail in my chest like a fool. We arrived at Kethavar at dusk. The gates opened as they always did, and the carriage rolled in over the packed snow of the main courtyard, and Oswin was waiting, as he always was, with the quiet readiness of a man who anticipated most things but permitted himself very little visible expression about them. When Wren stepped down from the carriage, 6 wolves came out of the shadow of the east colonnade. Not running, not sudden, walking steadily, in the way wolves walk when they know where they are going and are not in any particular hurry because the destination is not going anywhere. They arranged themselves in the courtyard in a loose shape that was not quite a formation and not quite a gathering, something between. Grieve was in the center of them. He walked to Wren and pressed his head against her hand. Oswin looked at me. His face was still composed. His eyes were bright. "My lord," he said very quietly, "the old seal." "I know," I said. "It's been 200 years, yes, Oswin." "Shall I?" "Not tonight," I said. "Tonight she is cold and tired and she has made a significant decision and she does not need a ceremony. There is time." Oswin bowed. Wren, surrounded by 6 wolves in the dusk-lit courtyard of Kethavar Hold, was scratching Grieve behind the ears and looking at the east wing wall. "You should get the stonework man in next week," she said, "before another storm comes. The damp will go deeper in a freeze." "I'll send for him in the morning," I said. She looked at me over Grieve's great gray head. "Good," she said. The seal ceremony happened 3 weeks later. Not because anyone pressed for it. Oswin had clearly been pressing for it in his careful, non-pressing way since approximately the moment Wren came back through the gates, and the elder Thane Holt had made a speech at the second week's council that was ostensibly about winter readiness, but was in fact about stability and continuity, and the importance of formalizing things, which was how Thane Holt talked about everything he wanted. It happened because Wren asked me about it. She had been with Mavin for 2 weeks by then, in the healer's room off the east courtyard, learning his catalog of remedies and his method, and his considerable opinions about the correct way to dry yarrow. and she came to find me on a Tuesday evening when the snow was falling lightly, and I was at my desk trying to finish the garrison allocation that I had still not managed to sign. She sat down across from me without asking, which had become the ordinary way of things. "The seal," she said. "You said it's the old marking of the bond before the hold." "Yes." "Not required." "No." She looked at the desk, at the paper waiting for my signature. Then she looked at me. "But it means something," she said. "It was not a question." "Yes." "To you, or to the hold, or to both?" "To both," I said. "The hold has been without a Luna for 11 years. A bond without the seal marking is complete, real. But the seal is the covenant with the wolves, with the land, with what the hold is. It is the stating of it aloud." "The stating of it aloud," she repeated slowly. "Yes." A silence. "I'd like to do it," she said, "if you would." "Yes," I said. I had been wanting to say this for 3 weeks and had been waiting, without quite knowing why, for her to arrive at it in her own time. It occurred to me that I had been doing that a great deal, waiting for her to arrive at things in her own time, and finding that her time was generally right. "What do I wear?" "Whatever you like," I said. She looked at me flatly. "That is not useful information." "The old ceremony doesn't prescribe dress," I said. "My mother wore the gold gown. My grandmother wore a traveling coat because she was bonded on a journey and saw no reason to change. The covenant does not care about the cloth." She considered this. "The gray wool," she said, half to herself. "The heavier one, with the old brooch that was my grandmother's." "That sounds right," I said. She stood up. She looked at the unsigned paper on my desk. "You should sign that," she said. "It's been 3 weeks." "I know." "I'll ask Oswin about the hall arrangements," she said, and she left, and I signed the allocation, and in the morning Oswin appeared at my door with the expression of a man experiencing something close to happiness, and told me he would see to the hall. The ceremony was in the great hall at the first full dark of a Thursday, which was the old custom, the solstice long past, but the winter still deep, the hold sealed in snow and torchlight. The hall was dressed plainly, the way Kethavar dressed for things that mattered, pine boughs on the west side, where the candlelight caught them properly, the iron chandeliers adjusted so that the second level sat higher, and everyone at the long tables could see without squinting. I had not commented on this. I had simply noted that Oswin had clearly consulted with someone. My counselors were there, the garrison commanders, the elder Thane Holt, who was, if I was reading him correctly, extremely satisfied with the evening's proceedings, Mavin the healer, who had arrived with a sprig of dried yarrow in his buttonhole, and the expression of a man who had spent 73 years waiting for someone to finally learn how to dry it properly. And the wolves. All 11 of them. The full pack. They arranged themselves along the walls of the great hall with the grave attention of witnesses who understand they are witnessing something, which is what wolves are, in the end, the oldest witnesses, the ones who remember the covenants before any of us were born. Wren came through the hall door in the gray wool dress with her grandmother's brooch pinned at the collar, and her dark hair done properly for once, and the frank, steady face of a woman who has decided something and is not renegotiating it. She walked the length of the hall. In the center of the floor, set into the old stone, old enough that my father's father's father could not have told you who first laid it there, was the iron seal. It was a circle, 3 feet across, inlaid in a dark metal that was neither iron nor copper but something between, and it was incised with the old marks of the blood covenant, the wolf's form and the human form and the bind between them, and it had not lit in 200 years. She walked across it. The iron flared gold. Not gradually, not tentatively. All at once, the whole circle of it, blazing up from the stone floor as though it had been waiting for nothing but this particular step, and the hall went entirely silent, not the silence of held breath, but the silence of something settling, of a thing that has been slightly wrong for a long time becoming, without noise, right. My wolf surged in my chest, and this time I let him, all the years of governing him, of keeping him still and quiet and controlled, and I let him go, and it felt like setting down a weight I had been carrying so long I had forgotten it was heavy. The counselors were standing. Thane Holt had his hand over his heart, which was not prescribed by any ceremony I had ever attended, and appeared to be simply what his body had decided to do. Mavin had taken the yarrow out of his buttonhole and was holding it in both hands as though it were significant, which was his way of being moved by things. Wren looked down at the seal glowing under her feet, then she looked up at me. She had not told me she was not afraid of me again since the carriage. She had simply demonstrated it, consistently, in the 3 weeks of morning herb lessons and evening conversations, and a Tuesday when she brought bread to my study without comment, and I ate it at my desk while she read from Mavin's catalog and told me which remedies she thought were overrated. She had demonstrated it in the way she walked through my hold and corrected bows and noticed damp, and remembered the names of every wolf in the pack within the first week, and addressed each of them as though they were persons, which, in the way that mattered, they were. I stepped down from the dais. I walked across the iron seal to where she was standing, and I offered her my hand. She took it. Not with ceremony, not with the gravity of a woman who has just had a significant thing happen to her, though a significant thing had just happened to her. With the same directness with which she did everything, clean and certain and entirely unintimidated. The plaster crew came this morning, she said, quietly, her hand in mine, the seal still glowing gold around us. I know, I said. Oswin told me. They'll need to come back in spring to check the repointing held. I'll schedule it. Good, she said. Grieve came forward from the wall. He sat between us and the hall, which was the oldest form of witness a wolf could give, the placing of his body between his king and the world, not as a barrier but as a declaration. The other wolves arranged themselves around the seal in a shape that was not quite a circle, and was not quite a line, and was the shape, I had always been told, that the pack took when something was being permanently acknowledged. The hall was still standing. Thane Holt still had his hand over his heart. I'll need a better workspace, Wren said still quietly, for the herbs. Mavin's room is good, but it wants more light in the afternoons. I'll speak with Oswin tomorrow. The west-facing room in the north wing would do. It gets the afternoon sun even in winter. It's done, I said. She looked at me for a moment in the gold light of a seal that had been dark for 200 years, and was blazing now because she had walked across it, and was, against all logic and all of my careful years of not needing anything, mine, and I was hers, which mattered more to me, in the way things matter to a man when he has finally stopped arguing with himself. You're going to be easier to govern than I expected, she said. I hope not, I said. She smiled, the real one, the full one, and it was, as I had suspected since the first time I almost saw it in a post house at Henmere, entirely worth everything. Spring came to Kethavar the way spring always came there, slowly, reluctantly, and then all at once, as though the mountain had been holding its breath and finally let go. The plaster held. The stoneman came back in the 4th week of the thaw and declared it sound, which Wren received with the quiet satisfaction of someone whose predictions tend to be correct, and who does not particularly need to say so. The west-facing room in the north wing became the herb room, and it was, as she had said it would be, well lit in the afternoons. Mavin came every second day, and they argued about yarrow with the focused intensity of two people who care very much about the same thing and have slightly different theories about it. And I listened from my desk in the adjacent room, and found that I did not mind the sound of it. Grieve's leg improved. Whether this was the heat of the new sleeping spot near the hall hearth or the particular remedy Wren applied to it twice a week, carefully, with the patience she brought to everything I could not say. Both, probably. She had a way of applying things, heat, remedy, attention, presence, that tended to work. The east corridor boughs were taken down with the spring cleaning and replaced with early season greenery, and they were hung, without instruction from anyone, on the west side. The solstice of the following year, when the hall was dressed and the wolves were along the walls and Kethavar's people filled the long tables, I sat at the high table and Wren sat beside me, and the iron seal in the center of the floor glowed faintly, not blazing, as it had that first night, but warm and steady, the way a hearthfire glows when it has been burning long enough to have settled into itself. And Thane Holt made a speech about winter readiness that was also, clearly, a speech about something else entirely. Mavin had brought yarrow again. He always brought it now. It had become his habit. Wren was listening to Thane Holt with the polite attention she brought to things she had already assessed and reached her own conclusions about, and her hand was on the table, and I put mine over it, and she turned it without looking at me and held on. This is what I know about destiny. It does not announce itself. It does not arrive in the shape you have been told to expect, with the signs you have been trained to recognize. It arrives in a storm, in the wrong carriage, soaking wet and carrying a clay cup and wanting to know whether your ovens use river clay or mountain clay. It arrives with opinions about boughs and plaster and candle heights and the correct way to dry yarrow, and it sits down at the rough table without waiting to be invited, and it looks at you with the frank, direct eyes of a woman from Thresh who has decided you are a person worth assessing, and it does not apologize for being unexpected. What I know about myself: I was a man who had governed very precisely for 11 years and believed that precision was sufficient and that everything else was a luxury I could do without. I was, in this, incorrect. I was incorrect about one specific thing, which was the cost of going without it. Wren of Thresh, who got into the wrong carriage and noticed my damp plaster and moved my boughs and had strong opinions about yarrow, corrected this. She has been correcting things in Kethavar ever since, and I find, very glad of it. The seal in the floor glows every night now, steady and gold and warm, the way it was always meant to.